Everybody, welcome back into the Color Gemstone Academy. I am your instructor, Paul DC, and this is my YouTube channel, Paul DC Gemstones. Now, we have just passed 400, we're about 438 subscribers, so if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe now. It is absolutely free, doesn't cost you a penny. I would like to get to 500 subscribers by Thanksgiving this year, so see if you can help push me over the top. Tell your friends and share these videos if you want to. All right, so what is this week's lesson all about? Well, those of you that watch the Sunday Fun Day with Paul and Judy on Judy Crowell's Facebook fan page, we do that every Sunday at noon Eastern time. I asked all of you to say, what do you want this lesson to be about? And I had a number of great ideas. A couple of you requested tiger's eye. A couple of you said you'd like to learn a little bit more about moissanite. Had somebody asking about garnet, which of course is one of my favorite gemstones of all time, so I will definitely get to that one. Had a couple of suggestions about sapphires, which is one of the most popular gemstones in the world. But in the end, we had one of our requests this week for Lisa, who was born on the 25th of November, and said, I'd like you to do a lesson about the November birthstone. So that's what we're going to do. This is about the November birthstone, and it's going to be about imperial topaz as well as citrine. I know what you're thinking. What the heck? What's with the birthstones of the month, and why couldn't they decide on one or the other? Well, let's talk about how that came into being in the first place. So I get questions about this all the time. Is it really topaz? Is it citrine? How can there be two? Well, as you know, we have four birthstones of the month for the month of December. But let me say how this came to be. Basically, in 1870, Tiffany and Company, you all have heard of that name, decided to start designating what would be the birthstone of the month. And they decided in 1870 to name topaz, yellow topaz or imperial topaz, sometimes called precious topaz, to be the birthstone for the month of November. And they cited a poem. You're wondering why I'm dressed like a French poet. I almost put the turtleneck on, but I live in Florida, so I couldn't do that. I'm going to read you this poem. Who comes first to this world below, in dreary November's fog and snow, should prize the topaz amber hue, emblem of friends and lovers true. Now, this was an unknown author, and I think I know why he wanted to remain anonymous, because I think it's a terrible poem. So the question was it really this magical poem that was discovered by an unknown author? Or was this just a clever way for Tiffany and Company to start marketing a gemstone that they wanted to make some money on? I'm going to go with door number two. I think that Tiffany was always pretty good at marketing gemstones, and I'm going to guess that that's why they came up with that poem. But to complicate matters even further, so it was designated in 1870 as a birthstone for the month of November. Well, then, around 1912, the Jewelers of America added citrine to their birthstone list. Now, they didn't take topaz off the list. They just then named two stones. It was going to be the precious or imperial topaz or the citrine. And the truth of the matter is, you've all seen me show you this citrine before. I'm going to pour some of them into a little bowl here so you can just kind of see the glory of all of that beautiful color. Well, most people back then, and whether it be 1870 or 1912, most people couldn't really tell the difference between a yellow topaz and a yellow citrine. And especially when you get Madeira citrine, it becomes even more complicated than that. But rest assured, both of those gems are suitable to be birthstones for the month of November. Well, let me get into some of the more boring attributes that I always talk about that you need to know, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about specifically imperial topaz, because a lot of you probably don't know imperial topaz as much as you would know citrine. Okay, so first of all, I mentioned it's a birthstone for the month of November, and that's on most of your birthstone lists, and there are a lot of birthstone lists out there. Now, it's the anniversary stone, I'm talking about the topaz now, for the 4th and 23rd anniversaries. When you get into the citrine, it is the anniversary stone for the 13th anniversary. So they're a little bit different in that regard. Zodiac stone, the imperial topaz is a zodiac stone for Sagittarius. And the citrine currently is not a member of the stone of the zodiac. What is the composition? Well, you know that when we were talking about quartz, lessons 1 and 2, parts 1 and 2 in quartz is silicon dioxide, and that would be the chemical composition of the citrine. However, the topaz is a little bit different, and this is a mouthful, so I'm going to try and read this very slowly to you. It is aluminum fluorohydroxysilicate, and again, that differs from what the citrine is. Now, once again, they will also have differing crystal structures. So the crystal structure of the topaz is orthorhombic, and the citrine is hexagonal. And I think we covered that in in our lesson on quartz. Now, refractive index. Now remember that speaks to the sparkle of the gemstone, and the topaz comes in between 1.62 and 1.63, whereas the citrine is 1.54 to 1.55. So they're pretty close, but that means that the topaz naturally is going to have a little higher degree of sparkle that you can see with your eye than you would in the citrine. Specific gravity, remember we talked about that. That is the heft of the gemstone. How does it feel? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel light? We know that amber is really, really light. We know that hematite is really, really heavy. Well, where these sit is, and the topaz is 3.54. And to give you a frame of reference, sapphire or ruby would be a 4. So 3.54 is pretty big. Citrine, a little less dense, is going to be 2.65. What does that mean? I just want to remind you some of the earlier lessons that we've gone through. Because the specific gravity of topaz is 3.54 and the citrine is 2.65. If they were the exact same size, the citrine would actually be bigger because it doesn't take up as much volume. So in other words, it's like we talked about before with amber. You can have a very big piece of amber that is lighter than a relatively small hematite. And that's what you need to know about specific gravity. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. You've seen blue topaz. You've probably seen maybe even some pink topaz. Maybe you've even seen some of the yellow topaz. But how the heck did this become known as imperial topaz? How did that happen? Well, basically, it got its name from the Russian czars of the 17th century. Remember, the czars are the emperors or supreme rulers or autocrats in Russia. So they claimed the exclusive rights to the pink topaz gems that were mined in Russia. Now, why did they do that? Because they could. They were czars. They don't have to answer to anybody. So they claimed it as the imperial topaz. Now, it's also sometimes referred to, and you'll hear it to this day, as precious topaz. Now, that's probably a pretty that's a pretty appropriate name, because the traditional original imperial topaz was basically an orange topaz that was dichroic. So under certain angles, you would see red flashes in that orange. And it was really like the color of what they described as the perfect sunset. And to get a topaz like that, and usually it's natural, is very, very rare. And thus, it's going to be much more valuable than some of the other typical topaz stones that you would see. Okay, so I don't have any live samples of imperial topaz to show you. I just don't have them in my collection. But through the magic of video, I'm going to go through what the traditional colors and what the now accepted colors are slowly So I can get an elongated picture on the screen of what I'm talking about. So the traditional November birthstone, the imperial topaz, was traditionally orange with red dichroism. Today, it is defined as topaz that might be yellow or pink or red or a lavender pink and a peach pink topaz. Now remember that orange with the red dichroism is undeniably still an imperial or precious topaz. But I wanted you to see what they look like on the screen. Okay, so you love the stone, you've seen it, you like it. Where does it come from? Where is it mainly mined? Well, topaz itself can be mined in a lot of different areas, but specifically talking about the imperial topaz, when it was first discovered, it was discovered in Russia in the Ural Mountain areas, and I'm going to show you what the Ural Mountains look like. And because it was discovered in Russia, that's why the Tsars in the 17th century laid claim to it as their own, and they were talking about topaz that was mined in their mother country, Russia. Today, fast forward, probably the most commercially mined material that you can get in imperial topaz is going to come, like so many other gemstones, from Brazil. Now, I showed you in earlier videos about where the mines for citrine and amethyst were, which is a little further south in the country of Brazil. I'm going to put a map up on the screen now so that you can see. If you take a look at this map, the state of Brazil is called Minas Gerais, which has a lot of mining in there. And you can see it's a little bit north of Rio de Janeiro. And when you fly into Brazil, it's into that international airport that you fly in. And we had to do other puddle jumpers to get to where we were mining the amethyst and citrine. However, in Minas Gerais, a couple hour drive still, to be sure, but you don't really have to take a puddle jumper, I don't think, to go to where that is. And this is a little bit of the mining operation that is there. And as I said, the most commercially viable today for getting your fix of your November birthstone, specifically, actually you got to go to Brazil for both of them, but specifically for that precious topaz or that imperial topaz. Well, that's going to wrap up our lesson for the birthstone for the month of November. Once again, if you enjoyed the lesson, please hit subscribe and maybe even the like button if you would. And remember, just because it says subscribe doesn't mean it costs anything. It's absolutely free. We do this every single Saturday. At a new video will drop at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So I hope that you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching the Colored Gemstone Academy.